So thank you everyone for joining the section. Why should the last mile in analytics be your first priority? Before I dive into the section, a little bit of introduction about myself. So my name is An, and I am a passionate data analyst and data scientist with more than 11 years of experience in different industries such as finance, technology, and wholesale in Vietnam, Singapore, and now in the Netherlands. Feel free to connect with me through LinkedIn. And currently, I am based in Amsterdam, and I work as a senior data scientist and also a consultant at DevoTeam, which is a technology consulting firm. And the good news is that we are hiring. So feel free to go to our company website to find out the opportunity if you are interested in. The agenda today have four main parts. So just like when you go to the restaurant, you often start with the appetizer, which is the level 1, and then you go with the main course, which is the level 2, and then after that, you may want to have the desserts, the level 3. And some of you may refer beverage at the end of the meal, or some of you refer throughout the whole meal. But I put it here as level 4. And similarly, in the analytic journey, you also have 4 levels. First, you see the problem, the business question. So you want to see, describe what really happened. And then you want to understand the reason why this is happened. And after explore the reason of the phenomena, you want to understand what's likely to happen if you do A. And the level 4 is that you want to know what should you do now, or in a nutshell is the key takeaway of the whole session. So we will follow that path. So first, what happened? So here in the slide, you will see that there's 12 cells represent for the percentage of the data science projects. Or the successful data science project in the company. And my question is that how many projects successfully go into production, do you think? So just pause a moment and just think of any number that you think based on your experience. And then the next one is the answer based on many studies. What you will see here is that you will see the answer to the question, or in other words, the black cells is the percentage of the data science project die before going to production. So it's not 25%, it's not 50%. Surprisingly, it's even not 75%. And shockingly, it's 80% of the data science projects never make into production. So it's a study by VentureBeat, and a lot of articles through the internet try to confirm and identify the problems that we see today. So again, 80% of the data science projects never make into production. So we really want to know why did this happen. So what they did is that they interview a lot of data scientists, experts in the company to know, in the study to understand why we see that 80% of the data science project never make into production. And they have a lot of questions. And then after that, they rank in some percentage what are the more common reasons that lead to the failure of the data science projects. And what I'm going to show here is that I'm going to show through, I try to rearrange the reason step by step throughout the whole analytics journey for you to understand better. So usually a data science project usually begin with the business problem or business questions. And when the data analyst or data scientist, they receive their business questions, some of them not even want to challenge the status quo, meaning they don't even ask whether it need to invest the time or do the certificates. data science project to answer their business questions. And then they look into the data. After they look into the data, they face the problem. So some people claim the data, for example, the data is dirty, the data is too difficult to work with the data doesn't have the format that they want, or not enough the data. They don't see the data that they need. So after this period, they go to the second step. They write the queries, and then only after that, findings that the infrastructure doesn't support the analysis. So for example, nowadays, most organizations are highly siloed, especially with COVID-19. With the introduction of COVID-19, a lot of companies acquire other companies. So two companies become one. So we often see that they have different infrastructure and the data sit in different places. Then how we can combine data into a single analysis, or sometimes the identity of one customer is not the same as other customer, or it's very hard to identify actually one customer already the client of two different companies before. So in a nutshell, the infrastructure doesn't support the analysis. However, they still carry out the analysis anyway. And at this step, only to find out that the business adoption after that drop. Some of the common reasons, for example, there's lack of knowledge sharing with the business stakeholder, and regarding to the communication, it's hard to explain the data science project to the business stakeholder, or for some reason, the results was not used by the decision makers. Some may argue that the business adoption for some analysis also increased after the analysis. However, there's something happened regarding, for example, organization restructure. Let's say some transition, they restructure the data science team, the data analytic team. Right now, some of the people support for different type of product. So the analysis that they did before transferred to another team that handle that projects, and they need to brief how they did before. And then the people who receive or take over the project are not very keen on try to understand the project and maintain the model. So a lot of projects fail in this transition period, and eventually it leads to the end result that the project failed. And then now we see that the whole analytic project, the whole analytic journeys explains some of the common reasons why 87% of the data science project never go into production. Some of you may argue that there may be some other part, for example, the business problem here, and then throughout the process, there's not even like success, in the dot slide here, it just decrease all the time, or it's just like the flashlight of the whole analytic journeys. But what we observe here is that the last step would be the business adoption, from the result of the analysis to the outcome of the project. It fell significantly. That's the common phenomena that we observe. And this we call it the last mile. So nowadays, so now we're interested in to know what is the last mile in analytics. So the last mile is the gap between analytics result and the action taken thereafter. So in today's session, we try to explore this last mile. If you imagine that you are running, then last mile are the last steps to reach to the destination. So after we understand the last mile, then we're interested in to know what could happen, or what was likely to happen if we do A or B or C. we often do that by when we carrying out data science project. We often do that by, for example, doing experimentation where we compare if the similar customer, if the customer A fall in the control group, what do they do? Customer A fall be similar to customer A fall in the treatment group, then what do they do? Then we compare the result and measure the impact. But here, because there's no official study that evidence that, so what I did is that's also based on my consulting experience and 11 years of working experience in different industries and garner the materials from consulting firms. I try to explain what's likely to happen. So this is a study from a McKinsey company with a consulting firm. What they see is that they see the breakaway companies often outperform other companies in 9 critical areas across 3 categories. The first one is the strategy. So they often align on the strategy. Either they obtain a strong unified commitment from on level of management, or they increase the investment on the last mile. The second category, they build the right foundation of the data, technology, and people. So I'm not going to read all of the subcategory here. And the last one, the last category is that they conquering the last mile by embedding analytics into decision making and processes. So what we see here through those 3 categories, we see that the last mile appear in every single category. So definitely the breakaway company focus on the last mile. Example, in the survey, they see that the breakaway company invest like 2 times more likely to prioritize the top decision-making process, or 2.5 times more likely to establish the decision-making rights and accountability, or 1.5 times more likely to achieve quick, continually refined decision-making. And throughout other questions in the survey, in the investigation, what they see is that they saw the consideration of the last mile is embedded in the whole analytic process. For example, whether it's a data strategy, data governance, or the methodology to carry out the analytics, or acquiring the talents, organize the structure, we always see the last mile embedded in the whole process. So that's the comparison between breakaway companies and others, remainders. And a lot of you may have the question at the moment. It seems that they outperform other companies in a lot of categories. But in the meantime, I have the feeling that because they invest in different categories a lot of time, like 2 times, 1.5 times, 3.5 times more than other companies. So does it mean that the breakaway companies simply just have so much money to splurge? The answer is no. If we look at this, so in the slide, you will see that this is the line here is the analytics budget allocated to the last mile. So imagine that we have 2 categories and we have $100 of investment into analytics. And the first category is the last mile. The second category is the remaining, whether you want to invest in talent acquisition or you want to invest in infrastructure, whatever regarding to the analytics. So here you will see that with the followers or with the normal company, you will see that, so each cell here, one cell is 10% of the company. So you will see that around 23% of the company in the follower category or in the normal company invest more than 50% of the analytics budget into the last mile. So the normal company, for the normal company, only 23% of them invest more than 50% of the budget into the last mile. But breakaway company, you will see it's a totally different picture. What's different here, we also see 100% of the breakaway company here on the slide. But what we see here is that only 10% of them invest less than 50% in the last mile, and 90% of them invest more than 50% of the analytic budget in the last mile. So it's quite a discovery, right? So apparently, the last mile is very important to the breakaway company. Maybe I should put it. Okay. So just to recap, nearly 90% of breakaway organizations devote more than half of their analytics budgets to the last mile. And 23% of the remainder do so, meaning that only 20% of them invest more than 50% of the analytic budgets into the last mile. So we see the differences. Then now we want to do, then what should we do? After we understand this, then what should we do? Normally, often we see that, okay, then I just copycat. I just copy what are the successful company already done. Or if you don't want to use the word copycat, then you may like rephrase by best practice. But I would like to use another word, which is the best suited practice, because companies are different. Some company in different stage. Some are startup, some in the grow. So company and some company have is different in the size, so they are all different. So the best strategy for them, for me, based on my experience, is the best suited practice. How they do it? So just to recap, what we are going to do here, we want to focus on the last mile, how we can do it better. So for example, we want to turn this line upside. So if the line lies somewhere in the orange area, that is good enough. I just want to make it a contrast by drawing the red line. So if we playing game or we want to solve, like if we go into a maze and we want to solve the problem, normally we don't start at the start, but we start with the end in mind, because while there are many ways that make us not reaching the end, but there's only one way, only one successful way that ensure us to reach the goal. And that way is beginning with an end in mind. And how do we do it? So we go back to the analytics journey. And this is our goal. We want to looking back and consider how we can increase the success of the last mile. And then we want to measure the performance of the last mile, and through there, we want to increase the performance of the last mile. And speaking of the performance, we need to mention about the metrics. So it's very crucial for us to make business adoption as an official metrics. So what do I mean by this? I mean, for example, a lot of analysis project, at the end, you measure You measure the accuracy of the model, a lot of metrics. You measure whether the model, like the false positive, those kind of data science metrics. But we haven't mentioned about the business adoption. How many business stakeholders actually use the result of the analysis? And if your company is a global company, you have an entity or office throughout the globe, then square the other market with similar customers demographic, for example, age or some target customer, they also use or adopt your model into making decision, whether the business stakeholder also utilize your analysis. So if we make business adoption as the official metrics, then we are able to measure the performance of the last mile. And through there, we can, after we're measuring, we can know, or we can understand better the stage, and through there, we enhance the last mile. And also, important thing is that we often talk about the successful projects, but how about the projects that fail? We should be transparent, and we should keep track of the failure, update the failure, share, like being transparent and doing the knowledge sharing about the failure of the projects. Only then we can learn from the mistake and enhance better next time. And here also, because of the business adoption is either crucial step in the whole analytic journeys. So it's very crucial if we involve stakeholders only and get frequent feedback from them, because at the end of the day, business stakeholders are the people that utilize the analysis and make their business decision. And also, if you are a business stakeholder, you can ask to involve in the kickoff meeting or from the beginning of the start of the whole data science or analytic projects. Then request for the frequent feedback, frequent meeting. Then it will help a lot with increasing the performance of the last mile. And then if we go back to one step further, with the analysis step, we better find the best suited analysis rather than the most sophisticated analysis. What I mean by this is that a lot of business stakeholders, they have a very good intuition. So sometimes they make the decision making, they make the decision and then on a project or in order to solve a business problem, and then they compare with the result of the analysis, and they saw that there's not so much difference between them. So we should ask the question at the beginning whether the sophisticated analysis makes sense here. So for example, a lot of business questions nowadays start with measuring the impact of a phenomenon. For example, whether we can assess the fraud impact in market A or the impact of launching a product B in the market C. So a lot of questions starting with measuring the impact. Then maybe we should imagine that we perfectly measuring 100% accurate of the impact of the project or the impact of the action. Then what next? So, or we can only measure the impact with the accuracy around 90% or 80%. If only though 20% different or 10% different, whether it's really make a big difference in terms of the action that we make. If it's significantly different, then we may want to invest more time and energy into doing the analysis. If it's not, if it's like just naive estimation is good enough for a business stakeholder, then we may want to do just simple analysis. So it totally depends on the circumstances. And then if we go back one step further with the data, the step where we claim the infrastructure. So with this step, a lot of things need to do with data governance. So for example, back to the example with the merger and acquisition earlier, or a lot of nowadays, a lot of data sits in different systems. Some, for example, some team use AWS, some team use Microsoft Azure, and or some data with different format, and it's very hard for analysts to do the analysis. So before we plan infrastructure, whether there is any data governance setting in place that support them. For example, nowadays we heard the term self-service BI, and with that, the business stakeholder can directly sometimes use the result or do the analysis themselves. But with that, we need to set up the access level, who can access to which data, and how we can combine the different infrastructure in a way that makes it easier for the stakeholder to use, to consume the data. So a lot of them need to think beforehand before we even think of the investment into the data governance. Similarly, with solution architecture or the way we organize the data. So at this step, a lot of you may think that like, I want everything. I want the best data governance out there. I want the best architecture out there. So I want the best technologies. But the reality is, in real life, there is something we call it constraint. So we often see this just a lot in the way how we work. We want to prioritize the important thing, but urgent thing first, and the less important, less urgent after. But when it comes to technology investment, if we think it back, also based on my experience of doing consulting job, it is people often do it differently. So what to do? There imagines that there's a project presented to the decision maker that which technology should you invest in. So sometimes it's like Microsoft Azure, sometimes it's AWS, and sometimes the decision maker doesn't understand clearly the technology, doesn't understand clearly what is the impact of the action. And what they do, they often delay the most important decision last, because often they are so sophisticated, they require a lot of knowledge in order to make a decision. So they prioritize or they do the easy one first, and only after that, after some months, realize that because those decisions that they make on the technology investment, they make the easy decision first, though after all become the constraint for their important decision after. So if we don't let the small action become our constraint for the bigger action, then we are likely to achieve the better last mile performance. So one note here is that makes the most impactful decision first. And then the last step, if we go back to business problem, so the note here is just be more vigilant. So for example, asking the question, is it better without the quantitative analysis? Is it worth investing time into sophisticated analysis, or it can be done in another way? So by answering those questions, we will be able to enhance the performance of the last mile. So the summary here, the summary of the session. First, always start with an end in mind and be extra vigilant, meaning asking the right questions, and then involve only and get updates frequently in the analysis projects, and makes the most impactful decision first, especially when it's come to technology investment. And always consider the opportunity cost. What do I mean by this? I mean, nowadays we often, if we do the investment in technologies, we often think that like whether that technology help us with their analysis. But what about if we don't use that technologies, we use another one? What is the differences in terms of the impact? Because every decision have the opportunity cost. So if we consider that, then we're able to enhance the better performance of the last mile. And with that, thank you very much for attending the session. And I really appreciate your feedback. David, you want to come back?
I'm back, Anne. I'm back. Thank you so much for that session. Really well put together. So I've already seen a little thank you come in the chat. So if you have enjoyed that at home, please do put us a little comment into the chat just to say thank you. That would be much appreciated. In terms of questions, I've definitely got a couple of questions for you, Anne. So I'm going to start going from there. Just before I do that, though, I think for me personally, actually, Anne, maybe I'll get you to stop sharing your screen and then people will be able to see us a little bit bigger, which would be great. But yeah, I must admit, it's one of those things with data and technology in general. Sometimes the actual technical challenge isn't the hardest part, and it's bringing everyone together, and it's getting alignment, and it's having different skill sets, and it's delivery focused and all that sort of stuff. And I must admit, in terms of my background, I worked for 12 years hands-on in tech, and then now running my own business. So it's, you know, I have a bit of that tech, but a little bit of the commercial awareness and all that sort of stuff, but it still blows my mind to this day. So I think it's really interesting what you're talking about there in terms of focusing on the last mile. In terms of that, in your opinion, what is the optimal organization structure to enhance the last mile of analytics? Because as you've pointed out, you know, actually, I love that slide actually, where it was like, look at data, blame the data, look at infrastructure, blame the infrastructure. So it's like, how do you pull this all together to focus on the last mile?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good question. And I would say, like, in my opinion, there's no perfect structure of the organization. So some organization may organize the team like they have the one single data analytic team, where they have data engineer, data analyst, and data engineer sitting together. They work together and support the product. Or organize other companies, they have like only one like team, like data analysts support specific products, and they have different product analysts support other products as well. So it's totally depend. And some company, they have the people who make the decision have very good knowledge of data science. But every single structure have the pitfall, like have the pros and cons. So for me, there's no perfect optimal structure. But what we want to understand, or what we want to do, is that we want to increase the cooperation between teams, regardless of the structure. Only by that we can get better feedback, better review of what we did, and through there we can enhance the performance of the last mile.
Amazing. Thanks very much, Anne. Just before, there is a question coming. I've got a couple more, but just before we do that, I will read out a few comments in the chat. So first of all, comment there from Helene. Helene saying, thanks, Anne. It's nice to meet you virtually and great to see DevoTeam at the Data Science Festival. Love the Netherlands pictures in the slides, and I think there's a few out there as well. So Helene heads up data at Tibco, so she definitely knows what she's talking about, and she knows a lot about the Netherlands as well, so that was good to see. A few more there. Jeffrey Payne, great to see you again, Jeffrey. Great session, very important topic. Amsterdam looks wonderful. I completely agree with that. Jared, some great content, expression of the and an expression of the challenges we face in the data world. Thank you, great presentation. Thank you very much. Many thanks, very useful. Thanks, Anne. So people have been enjoying it, and have been following along. So that's great. In terms of the Q&A, we have got a question coming from Sher. And it's actually pretty topical, I think, leading on from that last talking point that you were making there in terms of organization and structure like that. Sher is specifically asking about stakeholder buy-in. How do you know for sure that you have stakeholder buy-in? In other words, how do you convince them that this is the way to go? So, you have to get a lot of people aligned. Have you got any thoughts on stakeholder buy-in?
Yeah. So because that I work with different company in different industry, and also in different cultural background, also like Asia and Europe. And so I think based on my experience, if you involve your stakeholder only in the process, and you consult their opinion from the start, and then you make them know that you are carrying out that project and what is the impact that you bring to them. An important thing here is that you need to involve them very early. Then they will support the projects because they feel that they are the one who also do the project we do together. Not that you at the end of the day you throw the black box to them and that's okay. This is my recommendation because of I do random forest model. I do a lot of other certifications model, and then you need to believe because it's technology. Then they will have the resistances. So in my opinion, involve the involve the stakeholder only in the process, then it will make a lot of easier for you to carry out the rest of the project and convince them.
That makes a lot of sense. I think taking them on the journey with you, and sometimes as well as it being a black box, you've had all that learning along the way, of what you've been looking into, and then you kind of present it and they haven't seen all of that sort of stuff. So that's really, really helpful. I think in terms of that, we've given sessions in the past talking about the skill set needed for a data scientist, and it always comes down to some of it's technical, but some of it's also understanding the business and understanding all these different bits and pieces. And when you're doing that and you're looking to get that stakeholder buy-in and things like that, who do you think that should fall to? Should that fall to a data scientist, or should it fall to a product owner or a business analyst, or who should it fall to? And what do you think the key skills are there? Do you think that person needs to have that mix of technical and commercial?
You means that whether they should invest time on learning the commercial skill than technical skill, or
yeah, I think partly that wasn't actually my question, but that is definitely a good question that I'd love to get your opinion on. But I think, should it be the job of the data scientist to go and approach the business and get the stakeholder management, or should it be someone else within the team that's perhaps not the data scientist, who may be a business analyst or a product owner?
Yeah. So I think that's in my view, the best way to go is that your problem is my problem. So if you're, for example, imagines that you go to a store or you buy a ticket and you want to fly, and at the end of the day, there's some problem with your tickets and you cannot board a plane. And then the check-in counter say that okay, I don't know, I don't work at the ticket counter, so I cannot solve the problem. Please proceed into the ticket counter. Yeah. And then you're kind of upset, and then you say that, okay, but then by the time that I reach to the ticket counter, then my flight, I will miss my flight. And then they say, sorry, I cannot do anything because I was at the ticket counter. So as a customer, you will be upset. Then similarly here, if, for example, if you can hear different answer, okay, let me connect to the ticket counter for you. We will solve the problem. So your experience is totally different. So the key thing is that your problem should be also my problem. So we solve the problem together. So the project, so it's the responsibility of people who involved in the project to keep everyone updates, to make everyone on the same page. So I think that is the stake for all the stakeholders.
Amazing. I love that approach, actually. And it's a great analogy. So if you're in the project, it's with you, basically. Don't pass the buck. So yeah, that sounds fantastic. I think just a quick bit of feedback from my side in terms of your presentation. I actually loved that what should we do slide, and then you annotated it more and more and more, and it was always linking it back to sort of key takeaways. So I really enjoyed the way that you got that information across, so thank you for that. And one other thing that I found really interesting was when you were comparing the breakaway companies from the rest, and highlighting how much importance the breakaway companies put on the last mile and how they invest in the last mile. And what is it, do you think, that makes that happen? How do you get to become that breakaway company where you're investing so much in the last mile as opposed to being like the rest of the pack, as it were?
You mean what make them to reach to the breakaway
why did
level?
that happen? Yeah, why did that happen? How did it get that they're putting so much priority onto the last mile?
Yeah. So this either study that's carried out by the McKinsey company. So they study a lot of companies, and they do the survey, and then they put time together into learnings what make them become breakaway companies, and why they find out the reason that the breakaway company focus a lot on the last mile. So that's so they interview the leader, and then they observe how the company operate, and they split into different category, and that's the conclusion from the study that they observed. They compare through 3 category in 9 different subcategory, and then they see that the last mile analytics, or the gap between the analysis outcome and the outcome of the decision makes a lot of makes the significant in terms of the business outcome. So that's how they find out, and in reality, that's also make the company become the top leader in the market.
Yeah. Amazing. Thanks very much, Anne. A couple more comments into the chat. So another comment coming in there, thank you so much. Great content, really learned a lot. And then Laura's asking about a copy of the slides. So all of the sessions are recorded. I can see Lizzie's dropped a little comment in there for Laura, but all of the sessions are recorded. You can check them out on the website afterwards and be able to watch them back to go over the content again. Into the Q&A, it's good to see another question has come in, this time from Helene. So thank you very much for that, Helene. Helene's question specifically is, do you have any thoughts on scope creep and how to avoid it? Having a clear in mind helps, but you always learn new things during the project. So I think scope creep is something that we've all had to deal with at some point. But what are your views on scope creep and trying to avoid it or minimize it when you're working on one of these types of projects?
Can you also elaborate on what is scope creep means, whether it's like?
Yeah, so I think within a project, if you've defined the deliverables or what you're trying to achieve, and then you get halfway through and someone has a new idea or a different stakeholder wants to change it slightly, and it just becomes ever expanding. So your initial aim is different as the project goes on. And I think what you were talking about is obviously start with the end in mind. So I guess you can start with the end in mind, but I'm guessing things do still kind of creep, as it were, and change.
I see.
So how do you stop it from changing? Do you stop it from changing? Is it a good or bad thing? I don't know.
Okay, so I cannot say that whether it's good or bad thing, but I can say from my own experience. So I did many analysis projects that sometimes the business stakeholder chip in and say that maybe we need to change the scope, especially during the COVID-19. So the KPI changed, the strategy from the whole organization changed. So the investment in terms of efforts and energies and time of the stakeholder to that project also changed. So the important thing here is that in my own experience, clarify with the stakeholders what is the impact of the change, and whether it makes sense to change also. So, for example, sometimes it really makes sense because of the change in terms of strategy. So maybe because of the COVID-19, the whole organization changed. So that may make sense. But sometimes if the stakeholder just want to keep the enhancement in, for example, in the dashboard or already built, and it may impact in terms of the delivery day, or the migration into the new technologies, they have additional requests, and those requests may be minor, and you can take it to the next phase. Then you may want to carry out the migration first, just to roll out at the company level, for example, and then you still write those requests in the additional ticket, put it on the sprint planning in the backlog, and take it back later. So it totally depends on the situation. And all of the answer is based on my own experience, how to make the customer happy, how to make the stakeholder happy.
Amazing. Hopefully that helped Helene. I know Helene will have lots of experience keeping the customers happy as well at Tibco, so that's all good. In terms of I'm kind of looking at the Q&A, we've got through a couple of good questions there. Myself personally, I've got one more, Anne, so we'll maybe go with that one more question and then draw things to a close from there. And this particular question is quite broad, so I will put it out there for you, but I do always like talking about the future, and I do like to get some opinions from the speakers that come to the Data Science Festival. So what do you think would be the trends in analytics going forward into the future? Can you see any trends? What do you think the future of analytics looks like?
Yeah, sure. That's a very good question also. So maybe you imagine that through the years, even in your house, you have the washing machine, you have the dishwasher, and then a lot of those products try to make your life easier, save your time. And then after that, what you do with your free time is that you invest your time in hobby, or some of you just browse your phone and then just try to kill the time. So, but the aim of the product is to save the time in your life. So similarly, in analytics, a lot of product, a lot of application, they claim to save time for the analyst, for scientists, and save time to deal with the dirty data, save time to do the the integration and the delivery, or they call it continuous delivery, continuous integration. So in a nutshell, it tries to save your time, and so the communication of the whole analytic journey. What they left here, that leave your time to think about how to utilize the insight from the analysis. So I think that's also the trend in the future. In the future, we don't need to deal with a lot with the dirty data. We don't need to think a lot about how to integrate the projects. But what we need to do, our focus, like in top scientists and analysts, is that also a decision maker, is that how to make the impactful decision. And actually, that is also the trend, and what we see nowadays, that some of the company, they try to focus more on interpretation or decision intelligence. What they do, and also causal inference. So those are the terms. If you go to Google and you search, you will see that a lot of topic evolves around that. They want to explain the causal relationship between action A and then the outcome B. So that's what they want to focus on. They want to focus really on the impactful insights rather than the whole process doing the analysis. So I think that's really the trend.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Anne. And I'm sure everyone watching will be overjoyed if they don't have to deal with dirty data in the future. Although maybe secretly we all kind of enjoy it a little bit, don't we? But there we go. We will draw things to a close now. I will finish off with some thank yous if that's all right with everyone. So first of all, thank you for joining us at home. It's always great to have you joining the Data Science Festival. Massive thank you to you, Anne, and to the team at DevoTeam. I do say it after every session, but it's not just the time that you've given up today on a public holiday, but it's also the time in terms of preparing the content and thinking it all through. So we really, really do appreciate it as a community. It was a great session. How did you find it? Are you happy with how everything went? Did you enjoy speaking at the Data Science Festival?
Yeah, I really like it, and I am reading a lot of compliments and then appreciation. So I enjoyed it even more.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's nice to
thank you
know that
for
people
having
have
me.
watched. So yeah, it's definitely been appreciated. Myself at the top of the list, Anne. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
being part of the festival, and hopefully we get to do it again at some point in the future. But really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday. Hope everyone at home has a good day, and we will catch up with you all again very soon. Have a good one.
Thank you
Goodbye.
very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.